Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I'm Sarah Vantine here with Ted Ings. Today we have CDK Global with us and a familiar face with the roundtable, Kim Saylor. And Ted, exciting news and more to come with the Service Advisor Study.
Sarah, you're so right. Kim Saylor, Senior Director of Product Marketing at CDK. Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable, Kim.
Thanks for having me, Ted and Sarah. Good to see you.
Great to see you. And I know you have some amazing insights to share with our audience today. And Sarah and I got a chance to see some of the reveals that you'll be making. And Sarah, it's very timely.
It is, Ted. And Kim, to jump right in, CDK had some interesting new data around fixed ops and especially the Service Advisor report. Would love to talk to you a little bit more about that and what stood out to you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So we know that the advisor is the face of the dealership, the customer's window into the service department in a lot of cases. And so what really stood out is how consistently positive customers feel about their service advisor. So nearly 9 out of 10 said that advisors communicate clearly. They explained what was needed and they treated the customers with respect. And so that is huge because when those things don't happen, we saw NPS drop by roughly 40 points. So that advisor experience really makes or breaks how that customer feels about the dealership. And if you remember last time I talked about the service shopper study, and the number one reason customers return for service to the dealership rather than going someplace else was because of the relationship that they have with that dealership. And that relationship really is being built and reinforced in the service department, in particular by the service advisor.
Kim, you mentioned the relationship. I see that 4 out of 5 customers were greeted at their vehicle. Um, does that really matter that much?
It actually matters a lot more than people might think. So when customers are greeted at their car and they don't have to go find, when they're not greeted, excuse me, and then they have to go find that service advisor, NPS drops by more than 30 points. So it actually goes from a positive to a negative. And that first impression really sets the tone for that entire dealer visit. And so being greeted right away, it signals a respect for that customer's time. It reduces the uncertainty and immediately starts building that trust with the advisor and with the dealership. And so when that moment gets missed, when the advisor doesn't greet the customer at their car, the customers can feel overlooked or even frustrated before the service even begins. And so it's really hard to recover from that over the course of that service visit.
And Kim, I'm imagining, this greeting, this start to the process that really instills that trust that the customer has with their service advisor. And as you mentioned, that positive association with the dealership and their service advisor. I also thought it was really interesting that nearly 60% of service customers bought recommended services. And I do feel like maybe there's no coincidence there when service advisors are that positively perceived by their customers. But why do you think that is?
I mean, it really comes down to or back to trust. It comes back to communication. It comes back to being kept in the loop. So when customer receives, for example, automatic notifications along the way, they feel informed about what's happening with their vehicle, and it starts building that trust even before any recommendation is given to the customer. And so then when the advisors use a tool like the technician video, for example, to help visually explain that work, it removes any of that uncertainty and doubt. And we all know that the video is huge, and seeing the issue firsthand for the customer makes them more comfortable and makes it easier for them to say yes to that additional work. But it also reinforces both the advisor's role as a trusted advisor. It also reinforces the technician's role as the expert on their vehicle. And that actually goes back again to that service shopper study. The number two reason that customers chose to take their car to a dealership was because of the staff knowledge. And so this just helps, continue to reinforce that to the customer.
This is all good news, Kim. Also, we see that service advisors are improving at quoting accurate time estimates. Why is that important?
Well, time's important to all of us, and time is really one of the biggest drivers in satisfaction and service. So the study showed that 62% of the time that the vehicle was serviced and delivered when promised. So it's not perfect, but it is trending up. So the progress is important because that accurate promise time really, again, shapes how that customer feels about the visit. So when advisors are upfront and when they keep that customer informed, it's just one more thing to help build trust. And, again, technology helps to make that possible by giving advisors better insight into what's happening in the shop. It allows the customers to stay updated, if anything changes with that initial promise time. So it's all about delivering on the promise that the advisor's making to the customer.
And Kim, this study is really, really unpacking also some of the generational components with what's driving some of this retention and this this positive influence that service advisors are having with their customers.
Yeah.
One stat that really surprised people was that 94% of Gen Z service at the dealership that they bought from. What's driving that level of retention?
Well,
Well, for a lot of the Gen Zs, this vehicle purchase is their first big purchase, right? So there's a strong desire for them to protect that investment. They're still early in their ownership and they want to be confident in that, basically, that they're doing the right thing. And so the dealer service department feels like the safe, the most trustworthy option to them. And it's familiar because it's tied to the place where they bought their car. So it gives them that peace of mind that their vehicle, this big new investment, is being taken care of properly.
and Kim, that service advisor role is so critical. They talk to so many customers on a daily basis. And you mentioned the word trust now several times. I
Yes.
see also that 92% say they plan to return to the dealership for service.
Yeah.
Customers, that is. Is that higher than other generations?
Well, and specifically, the 92% is the Gen Z. So, yes, that's definitely higher than other generations. Millennials were close, but the Gen X and the boomers were notably lower. They were at about 75%. And so, what makes Gen Z so interesting is that their loyalty, it's already strong to the dealership. Even though they're new to vehicle owning, this vehicle ownership, it gives the dealers a real opportunity to build that long-term relationship because if you earn their trust early through service, they're a lot more likely to stick, with you over time. And it's a group that dealers really should not overlook because this is the future of your business, right? So that the Gen Zs are the future.
Well, and Kim, Gen Z and millennials, these generations are encompassing an even greater volume of the business and the book of business that
Yeah.
dealerships are retaining. Another piece that was really interesting was that Gen Z is also most likely to complete recall work and add additional
Oh,
services during their visit. Are
Yeah.
they just prone to spending more, or is there more to the equation with why we're seeing this happening?
Well, they are spending more, but it's not because they're carefree with their money or anything like that. In fact, many Gen Z said that financial concerns sometimes kept them from getting that recall work done. But when they do approve additional services, it's usually because they trust that advisor, they understand the value of the work being done. However, many of the ones that did not bring their car in for that recall work, it was because they were afraid that it was going to cost them money. So I do think there's a big opportunity for dealers to help educate their new buyers, the young shoppers in particular, that they are not going to have to pay for that recall. So whether they do that, at the time of purchase or it's part of, the service experience, it's a big opportunity, to help educate that, that group, that generation, the younger generation. And again, that's just one more way to build that relationship with them, to keep them coming back to the dealership.
we're speaking today to Kim Saylor at CDK Global about the recent service advisor study. Kim, if there's one takeaway that dealers including those watching, should take away from the study, what would that be?
Well, the biggest takeaway is just how great the advisors are doing and how the customers, the consumers are viewing them very positively.
Mm,
But I would also say that an additional takeaway is the powerful combination of both the advisor and the technology that's in service today. Trust, of course, still starts with the advisor, but tools can help those advisors set better expectations, help keep the customer in the loop, help them explain recommendations more clearly. And when that does happen, the experience to the consumer, it feels easier, it's more transparent, and more trustworthy. I've said that word 10 times since we've been talking. And that really is what helps keeping those customers coming back. So it's the advisors, and then you help the advisors with additional tools to help them give that customer a better experience.
Sarah, years ago, we didn't have all this technology. We always knew it was about the people and the relationship. But now, like Kim said, a lot of that technology is helping the advisor to spend more time with the customer, as we've heard, at the car, greeting them there, and being able to do their job better.
It's so true, Ted. And all of these efficiencies are being achieved. And it really just helps, again, bridge that communication with the customer and offer that transparency. Kim, I'm curious for our audience that's listening today, how do we get access to this study? How do we go and read the full takeaways that you've prepared? And what other solutions, where should they go to learn more?
Well, so for sure, go to cdkglobal.com. They can actually find the study and to learn more, but I will also share it with you to send
Okay.
out to the group as well.
All right. So, what we'll do is for the audience that's watching this now on the roundtable, if you check your email, we have an email coming out to you right now with that study that you can download and take a look at that. And Kim Saylor, thank you as always. Great insights, refreshing to hear most, if not all of these. So
Yeah,
great news
it's
for the
very
industry.
positive news. It's all great.
All right. Everybody, CDK Global, leader in the industry. Kim Saylor, Senior Director of Product Marketing, here
Thank
with us
you.
today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thanks.